Don't wander down that damn road, boy. Welcome back to Tubi Tuesday. That's right. I am your host, Here's Ratty. And today we're talking about a little horror movie called You Can't Kill Stephen King. Make sure you finger pop that like button consensually. Another movie that starts out with a road trip. A group of friends are traveling to Maine. We got the diverse spread of cast, and as they're driving, they show these little blurbs of their cliches, essentially. We got the nerdy, creepy virgin loner. We got the gangsta. As they're driving the back roads of Maine, they're looking at the map, getting all confused. And the one dude, Monroe, takes the map and he says, "This is a map of Massachusetts." Like, I understand getting confused by a map, but how do you have just a map of Massachusetts? As they're driving, Lamont's cranking the radio, listening to some gangster beats, some fucking hard tunage, and Monroe gets a straight up PTSD shell shock from hell, like he survived the trenches of Iraq, and he's like, "Please turn the music down." A lot of cliches off the bat. As they head into Maine, they see a giant sign that says something about loons.
Just a loon, that's all.
They go to this creepy little diner and everyone's being quiet and weird and talking. And I can't stress this fact enough how god-awful their Maine accents are. Like, I'm from New England, so I took offense to that when they did it, when they botched it. They're at the restaurant and the waitress is being weird, the cook's being weird, the guests are being weird, and they're just getting a weird vibe altogether. Then they head to the marina to get a boat, and then they run into another hillbilly that's obviously like, "What are y'all doing on these pots?" And they're like, "Hey, we're here to visit Stephen King, but also our grandparents passed away and they left us a lake house, so we're going to go vibe there for a while." And the dude's like, "You can't rent this boat." And they're like, "But your sign says we rent boats." And then she's like, "Well, take this one." He's like, "You can't have that one." The people in this town don't want them there. One of the main characters, Ronnie, is a Stephen King aficionado, so every little signs that he sees around this town reminds him of Stephen King. He's the one that wants to kind of detour their trip and find Stephen King. And as they go to get on the boat, he gets kind of like panicked because he reads it and the boat's called Christine. Oh shit, Stephen King reference. But don't worry, he instantly gets distracted when he sees one of the girls' boobs hanging out. And throughout the movie, there's a couple Stephen King references, from the loons to the boat called Christine to Ronnie doing the little finger from The Shining to little kids implying that the children of the corner are around. It's, for what they do with cliche references, I feel like they make up later on in the movie. There's a scene where Ronnie's laying on the couch and he's reading The Shining, and it shows him close the book as it says chapter 3, The Wasp's Nest. And I did some digging into that, being a Stephen King fan myself. From some research, it's a symbolism for impending danger, essentially. So they all go to the lake and they have Lamont drive the van back because they're like, someone needs to drive the car and fill up gas. So Lamont ends up, trying to get gas, and he's kind of stalked by this creepy inbred hillbilly type folk. And as he gets into the car, he puts his hands on the steering wheel. They get super glued there and he gets his throat slit. Back at the house, they have no clue that their friend Lamont was just killed, so they're having a great time. They're speedboating, they're swimming, they're partying. Ronnie goes down into the basement to just look around, and he finds an entire Stephen King collection. So, I'm telling you, if you're from Maine, you're only obsessed with Stephen King and Ben & Jerry's ice cream. That's it. There's no more to it than that. It's that simple. As it starts to get dark out, they start to worry about Lamont, so they go looking for him. They boat back into town, and they find out that Lamont was dead, but someone covered up the kill. They said he wasn't murdered. He was ripped apart by wolves, and that just sends shivers down their spines. Head back to the house. More chaos ensues. As the tension rises and more people get mad at Ronnie for only obsessing over Stephen King, and for the girls to be scared out of their wits, there's a little bit of an altercation at the house when things are miscommunicated. So one of the girls, Lori, storms out into the woods where she ends up getting murdered next, and they start to piece together that there might be a serial killer on the loose. Ronnie has a bright idea that these kills are strangely reminiscent to kills that are in a Stephen King novel, but they're just chalking him up to be a delusional psychopath. So all of them are essentially starting to get killed off, picked off one by one in Stephen King fashion.
Just serious danger. Stephen King danger.
And as the movie progresses, Ronnie starts to think that the killer might not just be an obsessed fan like him, but it might be Stephen King himself. And he can't tell his friends that, so all the blame kind of falls onto him because he's already the weird odd man out. So instead of being like, "Hey guys, I think it's Stephen King," they're like, "Hey, we think you're the killer." They don't like to split up. They like to keep close quarters. It's kind of a psychological game. And they all fall asleep, where Ronnie has this wild dream of Lamont, who's dressed up as Pennywise from Stephen King's It, but they show like a fucking zoom in shot of his big fat ass. And I'm like, holy shit. He wakes up to another one missing, and they find her dead. And then it spirals into everyone's blaming each other. They don't know who the killer is. It's a frenzy. They decide to mutually come together and find a way to trap the killer. They piece together the fact that, okay, they are kind of replicating kills from Stephen King books. So they go down in the basement, they study some books. Then Ronnie comes up with a genius idea. He's like, in this one short story, a brother and sister go out into the barn. But the brother and sister don't trust Ronnie, so they tie him up, and he can't really help. And whole finale climaxes up. You get some intensity, some grit, some fast-paced thrill ride. It comes down to just Ronnie and his friend Monroe that are left of the survivors, and it turns out that they really do think it's Stephen King killing them, because when Monroe hits the intruder with a shovel, eyeglasses break, and like, shit, only Stephen King wears eyeglasses. But Ronnie doesn't like that. He kind of ends up siding with Stephen King. He's like, you're not going to kill my favorite author, and then ends up turning his back on Monroe. As the movie climax, it does an end scene where you see that another group of tourists are in town asking about Stephen King's house back at the restaurant. And then it kind of does this smart little thing where it shows all the townsfolk. It pretty much is the same setup of they're like, you don't want to look for Stephen King, and then it kind of shows a snippet of showing how the entire town were the killers. It wasn't Stephen King after all. They showed a little montage, like a Saw montage of all the townsfolk playing part in the kills, and I thought that was genius. And then Ronnie becomes the new mayor. You know, all in all, it was a pretty solid movie. I mean, it was better than I thought it was going to be. It was pretty funny. When some of the kills were graphic, and I feel like the writing intention to it was very well. Yeah, that's a review, guys. Subscribe, hit that little ding-a-ling button harassing you, telling you, hey, it's me, I'm here, and I'm gonna say it one time for the one time, two time for the O's. Give me a hell yeah for horror. And I will say that Stephen King's character Holly is one of the worst characters ever written.
So, sis,